Hello, good morning. Today we'll start with the next lesson, which is ninth lesson, World Decolonization. As name suggests, that in this chapter we are going to discuss about decolonization process of the world. Okay, now this is the smallest lesson which we are going to learn. We are going to divide this lesson into two parts. Okay, in this lesson we are going to talk about the decolonization of some continent, two continent actually we are going to discuss, that Asia and Africa. Okay, first part of the lesson will discuss about the Asia's decolonization. From that, some of the countries as an example we are going to take, and decolonization process we are going to understand. And in the second part, in the second lesson, we are going to discuss about the Africa's decolonization. In that again, we are going to take some of the countries and its decolonization process from African continent. Okay, so let's begin. Already we have discussed about decolonization, what is mean by decolonization. Let's see one more time. Here is the definition. What is decolonization? Okay, so decolonization is the process in which a country was previously, it was a colony, means it was controlled by somebody else, becomes politically independent. The action of changing from colonial to independent status. In the last in the last lesson, we had discussed about the World War and India. Okay, so that time we understood that finally India got independence on 15th August 1947. Means already India, which was one of the colony of Britisher, it got freedom. Okay, so that time we discuss about the decolonization process of India. So now here we are going to understand the decolonization process of more countries. Okay, so what is decolonization? When the Europeans they came and they started to conquer some part of the world, and they established their colonies over there because they wanted to hold on that part. They wanted to dominate that part economically as well as politically, right? So they conquered that part, they established their colonies over there, they started to rule on that part. Okay, everything this happened. But when again it becomes independent economically as well as politically, so it is known as a decolonization process. Okay, so decolonization process, when it happened, when first world war and second world war ended. Already India, it was in that procedure. So many leaders they came across, they rose their voice. Already the movement was started in India. And when this movement it was watched by rest other countries from the other continent, so that time they felt that we also need to be independent. Okay, and from that point this decolonization process had been started. Okay, so the decolonization process through which the former, especially the European colonies, gain independence. Here the Europeans, so Portuguese, Dutch, um, French, and the Britishers. So they conquered most of the land. They established their colonies, and after so many years, after their ruling, these colonies again they became independent politically and the economically. Okay, so in this lesson we are going to talk about this decolonization procedure. So let's begin. Now this decolonization process, it took longer period. Okay, it took longer period all over the world. We are talking about world. We are not talking about only India, not Asia, but these Europeans, they established their colonies all over the world, all over the continent, and it took longer time to become independent. So the process of decolonization was accelerated in short time because of the conflicts among the European colonizer countries and occurrence of the First and Second World War and anti-colonial movements in the colonies. So as I told you that when the First World War and Second World War happened, so after that World War, from that point, the moment of this decolonization process had been started, because all the countries, they wanted their freedom, they wanted to free from this European colonization. The European countries could not have reasoned out colonization and the exploitation of the colonies from intellectual platform. Now in India, what was the situation? Under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, the process of the decolonization, took um, it culminating, it reached to the culminating point, it reached to the high point. Okay, and almost the people from India, they just started this independence movement, and the Britishers, they came to know that now this is the time that we have to leave India, because the people now, they are furious, they are angry, and it is no more possible to rule on India. Under the situation, England had become aware of the reality that their diminishing power. So they understood that their power is diminishing, their power is reducing um, day by day. So they understood this situation. This resulted in gradually introducing the system of integral autonomy in some of the colonies. Now, in the First World War, what happened? Turkey and Germany, these both countries, they defeated. Okay, so the which colonies were under their dominance. Now what happened to that? So to manage the administration of these colonies, um, League of Nation, it was established, and under this League of Nation, the system of trustees were established, introduced, and England and France, they were entrusted with the role of the trustees. After India, Cyprus as well as Malta, both these countries, they got independence. In 1971, England withdrew its army from the Gulf of Iran. Means step by step, here the examples are given that how step by step in Asia, when India got freedom, so other countries, they also got their independence. They got inspired by India's movement, and they also rose their voice against this colonization. So here after that, the England released its hold on Singapore. Means here we can see that the Britisher, they just diminishing their power, and now they started to leave that part, they started to just leave that country, and they gave autonomy to that country. Indochina, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria were under the French domination. These countries became independent. So it was not like that only the Britishers, they were the colonists, but the French, Portuguese, Dutch, they also were the colonies. Especially we fought against Britishers. So India especially fought against Britisher, and British, they got defeated. So not in World War, I am not talking about World War, but they got weaker because of this World War. So they understood that now we are not able to hold dominance on the countries, and that's why um, they just accepted this thing, and they started to leave the part of the countries, and they went back to their home country. So colonialism come to an end, and gradually the process of decolonization was completed in this era. Colonize, United Nations was largely responsible for facilitating this process. And why all this happened? Because of the World War First and World War Second. If World War First and World War Second could not happen, so this decolonization was not possible. But because of this First World War and Second World War, the allied nations, we know that the allied nations, they were the winners, but then also they lost their property, they lost their economy, they lost their human power. And because all this affects on their colonization, so they got more and more weak day by day, and because of this decolonization process could be happened. So first we are going to talk about the decolonization process of Maldives, which is in Asia. So first we are going to take Asia continent, and we are going to try to understand some countries decolonization process. So first we'll talk about the decolonization process of Maldives. Now in Maldives, Portuguese colonies were there from 1507. Okay, so the Portuguese, they enter in Maldives, and they establish their colonies all over the Maldives, and their dominance, it was there. So that time the Maldives, they started to pay tribute to Portuguese in Goa. The Portuguese who were there in Goa, this Maldives, they used to give tribute to this Portuguese. Tribute means what? जिसे हम खंडनी बोलते हैं. Okay, so it was one type of the khandani which was used to give by Maldives to Portuguese who were there in Goa. But when in 1573 the Portuguese rule was ended in Maldives, and by whom it was ended? It was ended by Muhammad Al Azam from Malabar. And after this accession, what happened? Maldives, it used to give tribute. Sultanate of Maldives, he made the treaty with Dutch, and the Dutch colonies established over there in Maldives, and gave them the administrative responsibility of Maldives. So because of this person, what happened? The accession process over of Portuguese, but the Dutch, they came over there and they conquered the Maldives land. Now, um, now the Maldives used to give tribute to Dutch colonies, means Dutch who were there in Sri Lanka. So now the Maldives started to give this tribute to Dutch who were there in Sri Lanka. Now the later, see, first the Portuguese rule, it was there on Maldives. Then after that the Dutch colonies established in Maldives, and finally the Britishers, they establish their hold on Maldives. They built their naval base and the radio transmission center in Maldives. Means first it was ruled by Portuguese, then Dutch, and finally it was ruled by Britishers. They also took Indian laborers in Maldives to work in the paddy field. Paddy means rice field. So this Maldives, so these Britishers who were ruling in Maldives, they used to take laborers from India, and they forced them to work in the paddy fields of Maldives. Maldives became independent on 26 July 1965 by a treaty which was signed at Colombo. So finally Maldives got its freedom from Portuguese, Dutch, and finally from Britishers on 26 July 1965, means after India. Okay, so we'll move to the next, which is Sri Lanka. Okay, now the next country from Asia, which is in the south of India. So here you can see in the map, that is orange color part, that is Sri Lanka. So on Sri Lanka also, European, they established their hold, the colonies they established over there, and Sri Lanka also wanted to become free from their rule. Okay, so the British rule, it was there in Sri Lanka from 1798 to 1948. So they ruled from 1798 to 1948. They took over Sri Lanka by defeating the Dutch and the Portuguese. So here again, On Sri Lanka also, Portuguese and Dutch colonies were there before the Britishers, but Britishers, they were more powerful, they were more superior, they had more human powers, and by using all this power, they defeated Portuguese and Dutch. They established their own colonies on Sri Lanka and they started to rule on this land. So the British plantation owners had take many laborers from Tamil Nadu to work in coffee plantation. In Sri Lanka, coffee plantation is the main agriculture plantation. So this Britishers, they used to take worker from Tamil Nadu, from India, and they forced them to work in Sri Lanka to these laborers. In Sri Lanka, the British dominated the production and markets of the coffee, tea, rubber, and coconut. They developed the Colombo as an international port city. So all these changes it had done by Britishers. So Britishers, they established their market of coffee, tea, rubber, and coconut, as well as they established international port at Colombo. They also established colleges and university in Sri Lanka and encouraged Buddhist studies. Sri Lanka became independent in 1948. Means at last British colonies were there in Sri Lanka, and finally in 1948 Sri Lanka became independent from Britishers rule. Now student, last country we will discuss about which is Myanmar, which was known as Brahmadesh also. So in Brahmadesh, so many dynasties power were there. When Portuguese enter in Myanmar, so that time one of the king was defeated by Portuguese and they established their colonies in Bangladesh. In 1611, so many dynasties were ruling in Myanmar. All they came together and they defeated Portuguese and they established their own rule. So United Myanmar adopted an expansionist policy and conquered the Manipur and Assam. So it means that the British Indian territory was under the treetop being invaded, a situation that caused three wars between the British and Myanmar. Means what? When the Britishers they came to know that there is uh, danger from the Myanmar side, that Myanmar they could take hold of their colony. So that time there was the war which was happened between the Myanmar and the Britishers. So three war happened between the Britishers and the Myanmar. In the first war in 1827, it was won by Britishers. Already we had discussed this in lesson number 4. So three war happened between Myanmar and Britishers. In the first war, Britishers they defeated Myanmar and they took over Assam and Manipur region of Myanmar. They also defeated Myanmar in second war. At about same time, the French, that time French had taken over the regions of Upper Burma. So the Britishers they defeated Myanmar in second war also. At the same time, the French were there and they attack on Myanmar. They took the advantage of this situation and they took hold of the Upper Burma from the Myanmar. In the third war, again British they won this region too, thereby ruling over entire Myanmar. Means till till third war, whole Myanmar part it was conquered by Britishers. The British administration annexed Myanmar as a province of British India. So when Myanmar they took control of all the part of Myanmar, so that time they it became the part of the Britishers colony, and in 1935 it was again separated from India and was granted autonomy. Autonomy means they could rule, uh, they could have their own government. So here the Britishers they gave independence to Myanmar. They announced that Myanmar could establish their own government. After 1937, the people in Myanmar created an organization which was called as Burma Indians army under the leadership of Aung San. So student, here we have seen that Burma Independence Army, which was established in Myanmar in after 1937. So under the leadership of Aung San, this army it was established. And what was the role of this army? So after World War II, they helped Japanese during this war, and because of that, what happened? The Britishers, they became more weaker, and they look like a downslide for the Britishers. So here the Myanmar, they strengthen their hold once again with the help of America. The British learned lesson that as administrative, that they could not afford to neglect the popular opinion in country, because in Myanmar the people, they wanted freedom, and that was the majority which Britishers, they could not neglect. They understood that now all the people, they wanted their freedom, they wanted their independence, and they appointed Aung San as a vice president. The British granted finally independence to Myanmar on 4th January 1948. This also we had discussed in lesson number 7, sorry, lesson number 4. So here the Myanmar also got freedom from British colonies on 4th January 1948 under the leadership of Vice President Aung San. And like this, the Asian countries, they got independent, it became decolonized. Okay, so in this lecture we have discussed about decolonization process of Asia. From that, some of the countries we discuss which got their freedom after World War. So we discussed Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Maldives, and their decolonization procedure. Okay, so in the next part, which will be our final part of this lesson, in that we are going to discuss about decolonization process of Africa, and some of the place or the region countries from Africa we are going to discuss, and their decolonization process we are going to discuss. Thank you and have a nice day.